Randy met Jessica when he was already 33 years old. At first, he was drawn to her by a feeling of pity and a desire to help her, because she seemed beautiful but fragile. As they communicated and corresponded, Randy gradually realized that he fell in love with her. Because of Randy's frequent travels as a military man, they kept in touch through social media. Almost every evening, they called each other via video link, shared news, exchanged thoughts, and sometimes got into joking skirmishes. "I can't wait," Jessica said with a smile. Jessica smiled when Randy expressed his desire to visit her again and give her a hug. They hadn't seen each other for 3 months, and Randy missed her very much. When Randy arrived, he saw Jessica and decided to propose to her while he was in town. He arranged a delightful celebratory dinner at home and gave her a ring at the end of the evening. Without a moment's hesitation, she gladly accepted his proposal, and Randy even thought she said, "I do," before he could get the ring out of his pocket. After a simple wedding ceremony, Randy brought his newly wedded wife to his apartment and went on another trip for work. However, Jessica longed for loneliness, because phone calls and constant communication on the internet could not fully recreate the presence of her husband in her life. One day, a friend invited her to an intellectual game, promising a pleasant evening in good company. With excitement, Jessica agreed. Arriving at the appointed place, she met her team, consisting of 3 girls and 5 other guys. Apart from Jessica, they were all studying at the same university and had a close friendship. Jessica enjoyed the game and asked her friend to invite her more often. It became a source of fun and entertainment for her. During Randy's vacation, Jessica stopped participating in the game. The rest of the team was sympathetic to her decision, because she promised to come back as soon as Randy left, and she was true to her word. The same evening, taking a break, returned to the game. In the end, their team won, and to celebrate this event, they decided to go to a cafe. There they stayed until closing time, and during the night the whole company became quite intoxicated. When it was time to leave, one of the men named Russell started stalking Jessica. He had been hinting and courting her for some time. That evening, he took the opportunity to kiss her. The alcohol in Jessica's system clouded her judgment, and she invited Russell to her empty apartment. The next morning, they woke up in the same bed. This continued for some time, and Russell came to her apartment several more times to dispel Jessica's loneliness. Randy began to suspect something wrong when he noticed small bruises on Jessica during their intimacy. He asked where they had come from, and Jessica hesitantly replied that she had gotten them while attending a dance class with a friend. Randy accepted that explanation and didn't push any further. As time went on, Jessica began having affairs not only with Russell, but also with 2 other members of their team. She did not hesitate to bring them to her home. But one day a neighbor confronted her on the landing and threatened to tell Randy everything. Jessica naturally forbade all 3 of her lovers to come to visit her. But when summer came, the vigilant neighbor went to visit her dacha. When Jessica shared this situation with her friend, the latter expressed her disapproval and criticized Jessica's actions. At this point, their communication and attendance at the game stopped. Returning home, Randy often noticed the displeased looks of the upstairs neighbors, a couple who recently had a baby. They complained that the noise coming from Randy and Jessica's apartment during their intimacy was disturbing them. Randy realized that these complaints were not limited to when he was at home. "Jessica, the neighbors are complaining about some disturbing noises coming from our apartment. What do you think about it?" he asked his wife sternly in the evening. Embarrassed, she replied that sometimes when he was away on a business trip, she watched interesting videos to entertain herself and wait for his return. Surprisingly, these words pleased him, and he decided to take Jessica's word for it. With the onset of autumn, colorful leaves fell from the trees, creating a bright landscape throughout the city. Randy spent the last days of the business trip looking forward to his upcoming vacation. He decided to surprise his wife by booking an expensive hotel for a trip to the sea. With this plan, he went home. Getting out of the cab outside his house, Randy ran into his usually friendly neighbor Curtis, who looked serious and didn't even smile at him. As they greeted each other, Curtis curtly said hello to Randy and asked for time to talk to him. After a short conversation about life and families, the neighbor blurted out, Your beloved wife does not waste time. She has 3 men at her disposal. Randy was stunned, his heart racing and sweat beading on his back. He looked at Curtis in disbelief, realizing in his heart that the old man was telling the truth. Thanking his neighbor for the information, Randy was left with Grigory Ilyitch's last words, which echoed in his ears. Now, Randy, it's time for you to behave like a man. Now a clear picture arose in his husband's mind. He imagined the bruises on his wife's body and the moans that alarmed the neighbors. Everything suddenly became obvious. Randy simply hadn't noticed or paid attention to the signs. Jessica should have been home waiting for him. He even called her from the train station upon his arrival. She met him with a smile and hugged him joyfully. But noticing her husband's gloomy mood, she realized that something was wrong. She asked, sympathetically, "What's wrong?" Randy stared unblinkingly at his wife. Suddenly, it was not his beloved, whom he had dreamed of during the nights he was away from her, but a strange, unpleasant woman. And a foreign, unpleasant woman. It even seemed to him that his wife smelled differently, a completely unrelated odor. Saw Curtis. Randy began and noticed Jessica stagger back and grab the door jamb. Told me something interesting here. Jessica looked at him with a startled look, her lips quivering. Randy kept talking, and she was getting paler and paler. Jessica slid to the floor, covered her face with her hands and cried. She didn't deny the obvious, just told Randy what had happened without hiding anything. He sat on a stool in the hallway and listened to her. "I'm going to sell the apartment," he said suddenly. "I can't live here after such a nasty thing." These words made Jessica cry even harder. She begged her husband for forgiveness, but he shook his head at her every "I'm sorry." Randy wasn't fooled. He put the apartment up for sale the very next day, and because he deliberately underpriced it, buyers were found quickly. The whole vacation he was engaged in divorce and moving. Jessica, on the other hand, returned to her mother on her small-town social worker's salary. She couldn't even afford to rent an apartment. Her mom cried for days from shock. Russell, one of the 3 men she spent time with, confided in her that they had an argument among themselves about whether any of them could get a married woman to be intimate. At such news and humiliation, Jessica was completely horrified. After all, she naively believed that she just liked the 3 of them. For a long time, Jessica thought about the whole situation and cried. With that company, she no longer communicated, and she had no time to find a new job. She tried to find some part-time work to move out of her mom's house. But before going to bed, she had plenty of time to reflect on how the betrayal on her part had negatively affected her own life. So that's the story. Share in the comments what you think about this situation and the character's behavior. And thank you for listening to the story to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to the story channel for you. All the best.